Joel's Birding and Optics Retrospective. This is going to be a video, can be fun to make, about my reminiscence of my birding optics experience. And we're going to start in New York City, and we're going to end up in Orange County, California. I looked at my bookshelf and found out that I had this book of life list of birds, and it was started in 1953. I was 11 years old in 1953, and for a number of years after that, I kept life bird lists, as you can see, through college, but then when I went to graduate school, that stopped for a while. My first Christmas bird count was actually in 1957 in the wintertime, December 22nd. I went to the Bronx Westchester region and participated in it. And when I saw the National Audubon bird count field notes on that count, I was really excited to see my name in print. I think that's the first time I actually saw it in print. And after that, I've been involved in Christmas bird counts ever since. I have firm memories of the Bronx count. It's nothing like what the San Juan Capistrano counts like, which is a cooperative effort. So here's my memory of that 1957 count. Once you join one of the subgroups, it's for life. You can't switch to another team. You don't talk to the other teams. You don't tell them what's in your area before the compilation at night. And it's at this big German restaurant where the compilers are up on a stage. The rare bird alert line dries up before the count because no one wants to tell you what rarities are in the area. And the teams try to cultivate unusual species by enticing them to stay for the winter so they can have a greater number of species. You sit with your group at your own table at count compilation. And the order of presenting results by team is that the team with the largest species number goes last on the roll call of species. And the roll call was that every previous species that was seen on the count is called out, and each group says how many they had. So you would see no, 3. And so the group that had the greatest number would then triumphantly say, hey, we got this, you guys haven't seen the species. At the end of the count, they ask, are there any new species on the count? And the highlight is that when a new species is mentioned, probably unknown by the other teams, there is a gasp of appreciation. It's very competitive, and it was a lot of fun. Who would have thought that this 15-year-old in 1957 would eventually run, just briefly, the San Juan Capistrano Christmas bird count. And in fact, the last count, every count, you have memories of counts. The last count was done in last December, and I was out of town. We drove back home that day. I looked at the eBird report and found out that the groups that I had set up, I did the logistics, did not have yellow-crowned night heron. And if we don't have it, our team doesn't have it, the count area will not have it. And so, being a competitive birder, I grabbed a flashlight, I grabbed my camera, and I went down to the Dana Point Harbor and looking around for this missing bird. And sure enough, there he was on the rocks, or there she was. I got a picture of that, and the birding guards always smile down at people who go out of their way. Because what happened was a barn owl then flew by and landed on the rocks. In fact, it almost landed on the same rock initially as the yellow-crowned night heron. And it turns out that, as far as I know, that both of these individuals representing species were the only ones found on the San Juan Capistrano count on December 26, 2021. During my birding in Orange County, I encouraged people to go out and join the Christmas bird count teams. And I would post this essay every year if I could. And the essay was put in Wandering Tattler December 2019 issue. If you want to see the full essay, the link is on the bottom. But I'm going to read you part of it. My late brother used to say there were 3 types of people in the world: those who make things happen, those who watch things happen, and those who open up their eyes and say, "What happened?" When it comes to participation or lack of it in the annual Christmas bird counts, those categories seem to fit well. There are a cadre of birders in the minority when compared to the memberships we see in our birding groups and local Audubon societies in our area who carry the load and participate in not just one but multiple Christmas bird counts each year. These birders not only get a high by using their skills for citizen science, but also use the occasion as a learning and social experience. There is always something to learn from the experienced field observer to the beginning birder, and there's always a place for both on count day. A Google search and reasons for participating in the count and my own thoughts on the matter include, and the original essay goes into quite a number, they include it continues a tradition started in December 25, 1900, by Frank Chapman and 26 other concerned citizens in 13 states as a response to a traditional, indiscriminate killing of birds around the same date. People would go out, and the one who killed the most birds would win some sort of prize. And that's how Christmas bird counts started. You join over, at least at that time, 50,000 other birders doing over 1,800 count circles who show their love of bird watching with their participation. Another reason why. It's a small payback we can make to a hobby that gives many of us a great amount of satisfaction. So don't be in the group that watches things happen by others or procrastinates about missing happenings. Contact the regional coordinators of Christmas bird counts for placement on coverage teams. It's not too late, and many teams I know could use an extra pair of eyes and data takers. I'll tell you about another Christmas bird count experience later in this video. So I looked online and I found out that in 1958 I had joined the Linnaean Society of New York and found out that this society is open to persons with an active interest in ornithology, natural science, and conservation. 16 years old. I also found, much to my delight when I looked at this, that the society was created in 1878, founded then, and among the people who founded it was John Burroughs, one of my favorite conservationists and birders. In fact, he was more famous at the time than John Muir was, and he wrote an essay on the art of seeing things, which I use extensively in my classes. And 2 quotes from that: "If we think birds, we shall see birds wherever we go. You must have the bird in your heart before you can find it in the bush." Neat essay. At the Linnaean Society, I was able to meet Roger Torrey Peterson. And I probably knew that he was going to be there and brought my brand new Field Guide to the Birds by Peterson. And he signed it. This is one of my treasures. It doesn't look like a treasure anymore. It's seen a lot of field action. When I took up birding, I became fascinated with good optical equipment. I don't remember the first pair of binoculars I had, but I've had many, many more since. And when I taught ornithology, I was determined that my students would know quite a bit about binoculars. Biology students know a lot about microscopes. Field biologists should know about binoculars. And so I created a laboratory for those students, and eventually that laboratory is the basis for a 2-part YouTube video that I have on binoculars, one of my more popular offerings on YouTube. Part 1 involves basically optics, and Part 2, separate video, involves basically mechanics of the binocular, how to adjust them, etc. Whenever I train my docent trainees at Upper Newport Bay, the first lesson would be to how to adjust your binoculars. And when I go on field trips, and if I lead them, it's a public field trip, even if the people have experience with binoculars, I always go through a little bit about adjusting binoculars. And I have a YouTube video on this as well. When I was 13, I bought my first spotting scope, the bow scope. I saved for it for over a year. And I soon started, that was the spotting scope at the time. And I soon started taking pictures, that was films, through that scope. At one time, I had lots of cameras, film cameras. In fact, I even had a black and white darkroom. I still have that unit, that bow scope, and it was rebuilt once in a machine shop, and many other scopes I've used for class field trips. And over the years, here's me I was 16 years old, my trusty bow scope, probably at Jamaica Bay in New York. And I take out these scopes if I participate in Dr. Ernestie's marine biology field trip to Bolsa Chica when I train those people, those students, and also the Upper Newport Bay trainees. I know enough about spotting scopes and how they're used in the field to produce a YouTube video, another popular one, on how to use a spotting scope, the etiquette of it, the rules, you don't kick the tripod, for instance, and how to look through a spotting scope. This is another YouTube video. And I was experimenting, but the pandemic kind of stopped that, using a high-end zoom camera with a field monitor to show people birds as a group so they could all see the same image. It's quite apparent that I'm interested in environmental education, trying to bring the outdoors to as many people as possible, and to increase their ability to see nature with all these optical tools. And there was and it's still in existence, something called Bird Chat online, in which a number of us would have threads about topics. And one of the threads was about tips for leading field trips. And about, 30 of us had various ideas. I put those together in an essay, including my own feelings about the subject, and the Birding magazine in June of 2002 published my essay in the Building Birding Skills Leading Field Trips. In 1963, I graduated from the City College of New York. In fact, I have a sweatshirt that says, "Never underestimate an old man who graduated from CCNY." And then went to graduate school at the University of California, Riverside, gaining my PhD in 1968. I then started teaching at California State University at Fullerton, and that and raising a family, 2 daughters, reduced my recreational birding time. It picked up in 1989 when we moved from Fullerton down to Dana Point, California, and I contemplated what I wanted to do when I retired, although I don't feel like I'm retired right now. In 1995, I was asked to participate in the training of Upper Newport Bay docent trainees and tell them about birds and birding of Upper Newport Bay. That's a real privilege, This pandemic pretty much created a problem, obviously. We would meet every Thursday night for the group, and then a Saturday field trip. And I had just a small portion of their course. And so I did it on Zoom, met the group on Thursday on Zoom. This was recorded, and it's in my YouTube video saved files, but you're not going to see it because I put it as private. Maybe one of these days I'll actually make it public. But because I could not take them to the field because of the pandemic, what I decided to do was to go to Upper Newport Bay that fall and take as many pictures as I could with my better equipment and create not only YouTube videos on bird identification, but also environmental education and nature interpretation. And so I was trying to train them to lead field trips using this series. And it's a 3-part series. Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. This picture actually is from a Christmas bird count in December of 2019 when we saw that kingfisher. It slowly dissolves and digests that fish. It doesn't swallow it all at once, but it slowly but surely eats it slowly. In 1997, the rare bird alert for Orange County opened up. There was a vacancy. I'd always thought that it might be fun to run a RBA, but I wanted to do it when I retired. But this opportunity arose, and I just grabbed at it, and I took it over and put a dedicated phone line in my office. And so I could see messages coming in, and recorded a weekly message that went out. We had a fancy answering machine. I also started an online RBA listserv on Yahoo Groups and was also involved with Bob Allen in the start of the Orange County Birding website. And we had those until 2017 when we decided to retire from that and give it to the next generation of competent birders in Orange County. Every week, Doug Willick, who has recently retired and is now in Texas, an Orange County birder that we will all miss, and has a nice little pamphlet, a booklet on the birds of Orange County. He's one of the authors. And he would call in every week, and we would go over that week's bird sightings and determine what would go on the weekly bird summary. So when I did turn it over and retired, I got this nice letter from Thomas Blackman, the president of the Western Field Ornithologists. December 11th, 2017. Dear Joel, all of us at Western Field Ornithologists would like to thank you for a job well done. The amazing volunteer time you put into documenting and tracking bird sightings in Orange County for over 20 years has changed the face of birding in your small county. Doesn't look like a small county to me, but many of us in the wider community noted in the announcement of your retirement that it is taking 3 men to fill in your shoes at the OC Bird Alert and online listserv. Here's to a job wonderfully done and hoping you enjoy your retirement. And a lot of neat experiences doing the RBA, and I'm going to share some of the bird species that the ones that were really memorable. So I wanted to do that and give you 5 contributions I've made to species distributions for Orange County, California. Lots of birds, but 4 of them stand out, and a study I did as well. So this essay I'm going to show you was submitted to the California Bird Records Committee to document a sighting that was done on January 5th of 1996. Probably about only 30 people were able to actually see this bird, and a lot of people came the next day and were very disappointed. Ivory Gull, Doheny State Beach, Orange County, California. On 5 January 1996, an immature ivory gull was found at Doheny State Beach, Orange County, California. If accepted, this record would be a first for the state of California. This report puts forth the events of that day. Dr. Joel Weintraub, that's me, a resident of Dana Point and professor of zoology at California State University at Fullerton, went to Doheny in Dana Point, California, in order to find the lesser blackback gull that had been wintering at the mouth of San Juan Creek. It was his fourth attempt. He had searched this route the previous 2 days without seeing anything out of the ordinary. Joel hiked with a minimum of observational equipment. I hate weight to go in the field. I had only binoculars, no field guide. He parked his car on Pacific Coast Highway near a pedestrian bridge. It crosses the railroad tracks to the south of the main part of the park and proceeded to hike up the beach. The time was about 9:45 a.m. on Friday, January 5th. Should have drum music right now. And what did he see? Well, it was really nice what he saw. He saw the bird on the left and flying on the right. About 2 blocks into the hike, a whitish gull was seen resting on the slope of the beach in a large gravelly area. It was sitting on the pebbles, and the presence of a jogger nearby did not disturb it. Joel viewed the bird with his 10 by 50 binoculars, but could not identify the bird from memory. He knew it was unusual, but thought it could be a partial albino. The lack of color spots on the bill bothered him. Joel did not disturb the bird, though he felt he could go right up to it and capture it, but proceeded up the beach. About a block further on were about 1,000 gulls, and there was the lesser blackback gull, was finally seen. Joel then went further up the beach to the edge of San Juan Creek, where he noticed 4 birders on the other side of the creek. By yelling and motioning, he was able to get their attention, so they had to go up over to the park road. They had to cross the bridge to join me, and I showed them the lesser blackback gull. One of the birders then left, much probably to their dismay later, and Joel asked the others to accompany him back to the beach bird. It could be seen from the point where the lesser blackback gull was found. The group of 4 birders then viewed the whitish gull close up. The time was about 10:30 a.m., and the gull had not moved from the spot where it had earlier been seen. The group leafed through the National Geographic Field Guide, and one of the members asked whether the bird could be an ivory gull. The match to an immature individual was exact. Although I first found the bird, the entire group identified it. That is why the record is being submitted under the names of Joel Weintraub of Dana Point, Irene Horiachi of Huntington Beach, Carolyn Rainsford of Long Beach, and Lucy Lee of Lake Forest, California. Spectacular sighting. The field notes indicate that it was astounding was this immature ivory gull found in far southern California at Dana Point, California. A first for California, it apparently provided the southernmost record ever for the species. This is a bird that winters in the Bering ice flows, Since that time, there was another sighting in central California of an ivory gull. Spectacular bird. And I wrote a paper with the late Mike San Miguel on the first record of it in Western Birds. And here the bird is flying, to the right. The photographs I have, at least the print photographs, shows it to the left. So I'm not sure if they reverse it or not. 20 days later, this bird showed up at Doheny State Beach. After Tim Ryan found this blackback wagtail, which subsequently has been relegated as a white wagtail. In San Juan Creek, I spent over 140 hours observing this bird and helping the many people who came to look for it. I got to be pretty good at that. I took the online name of Wagtail 1997 after it returned in 1997. And if you saw this bird, I'd probably help you find it or to locate it. I don't have many pictures anymore. Somehow most of my pictures are now gone. Went through a lot of computers and hard drives. But I want to show you that the California Bird Records Committee's report on it said that it's a remarkably well-documented immature male was along Lower San Juan Creek, Dana Point's San Juan Capistrano, Orange County, 25th January to 12th of April, 1996. Lots of people submitted documentation. And next to my name, there is a kind of a sword, which indicates I submitted quite a bit of photographic information. The committee's decision regarding identification was greatly simplified by the thorough documentation, which included a daily chronicle of the bird's activities. And then we go through that, and then it says this constitutes the first record for Orange County and the southernmost for California. Then one adult male at Doheny State Beach the following fall, 27th September to 7th of October, was considered to be the same bird returning from the previous year. Its sudden disappearance when it appeared to have settled in to spend a second winter suggested possible predation. And I submitted documentation on that. I did not find it. Kept going out to see if the bird was returning, but someone else found it first. And the reason I think it was a possible predation situation was the bird was foraging north of the PCH, Pacific Coast Highway Bridge. And at that time, the light poles over the bridge had a hunting peregrine falcon. That was its hunting area. So it's really too bad it wasn't there that second winter for the full winter. Just to show you what I did, sometimes I glomp onto a project and I spend a lot of time on it. I submitted this to the California Bird Records Committee in support of the record. The bird roosted 35 to 38 feet high in a eucalyptus tree located in a noisy, well-lighted area. It was right at the edge of the campground, and in fact where the talks are given. The wagtail was first seen away from the roost 4.7 minutes before sunrise. These times became earlier just before the bird disappeared. The bird roosted 6.7 minutes before sunset, roosting earlier on cloudy evenings. During February, parts of March, and April, the wagtail foraged in the channel around Doheny in early morning and late afternoon, and then it foraged the rest of the day upstream. When it first came, people would go to Doheny State Beach. They would see the wagtail, then it would take off. And people would search the ball fields and everything else, couldn't find it. And eventually, it took me about 10 days. In February, I found the wagtail within a segment of San Juan Creek around La Novia Bridge, about 2.5 to 3.5 miles from the roost tree. One of my great finds. For most of March, the wagtail stayed around the state beach when temporary pools with high amounts of insect prey were present. When those puddles dried up, the bird resumed its daily upstream flights to an undiscovered area. And then I did some food studies of it. I thought, I've done food studies of other animals. The major food items recovered from wagtail feces, and that was something because, I would look at the wagtail and follow it through, and then when pooped, I would fix on where that was and immediately go out and scoop it out. That was a feat in itself. So I did that from the puddle areas where water treader bugs and aquatic insect larvae, that from the channel were long-legged flies, water treader bugs, and aquatic insect larvae. You do that from the wing fragments, and I also did some sample catching with insect net. The estimated foraging home range of the bird was about 67 acres. He was a pugnacious individual. He chased 19 bird species. Some were seed eaters, meaning they weren't competitors. 9 species chased or displaced the wagtail. Morning aggressive interactions reached a peak the week before the bird disappeared. That same time period, the wagtail showed early morning, high-altitude flights away from the channel. It would go way up in the air and then disappear to the north. And we thought, that's it, not going to return. But he did that for, about a week until finally I had to tell birders that showed up, hey, that animal's not there anymore. Nutting's Flycatcher, 2000 record. Nutting's Flycatcher, one in Irvine, Orange County, 11th of November, 200. This is a long-lived bird. Well, it's actually 2000 to 26 March 2001. Lots and lots of people submitting documentation, lots and lots of photographs, including myself. It was seen by hundreds of birders. I would say there were probably thousands that came to see this state record. I was running the RBA at the time, and I devoted a folder to the Nutting's Flycatcher. And you can see on the right it says Wagtail 1997. Ryan, who's now the person who's running the RBA, the online RBA, has contributed to this folder. This was originally as a Yahoo group, and it was moved to another platform. So you can see there's lots of things here. I want to show you the summary of it, since a lot of you probably, the birders, or looking at this, looked at the Nutting's Flycatcher. So I did a summary of it. Nutting's Flycatcher, November 2000 through March 2001, Mason Regional Park, Orange County, Irvine, California. Get it right. The Nutting's Flycatcher was last reported to the Orange County Rare Bird Alert on March 26. We can only assume it has left the area. Perhaps next winter it will again migrate back into this area of Mason Regional Park. Don't think it ever did that. Summary. This bird, first found on November 11th by Jim Pike and Doug Willick, and tentatively identified as a dusky-capped flycatcher, was finally identified as the Nutting's Flycatcher on December 22nd, with the help of a number of people there that day, including Bettina Eastman, Brian Daniels, Jim Pike, Larry Tripp, Joe Moreland, Maya Decker, Robbie Fisher, and Doug Willick. Now, I happened to be there that day as well. In fact, there were lots of people there that day, because a Harris's sparrow and a white-throated sparrow was also at the park. Why aren't they there? With the help of? Well, that's above my pay scale. The bird had become more predictable in its behavior and was vocalizing, making the identification easier. As Jim Pike indicated, it was identified as a dusky-capped on the basis of an atypical undertail pattern that initially appeared to lack any rufous. However, from the beginning it was apparent that certain field marks suggested Nutting's as a real possibility. When the bird on the 22nd of December gave its weep call, Jim indicated we were relieved when it called not surprised. The flycatcher started foraging as early as 7:30 a.m. on sunny days. It seldom called but seemed more vocal in the afternoon. On rainy days, the chances of seeing the bird was much reduced. The flycatcher had a limited home range of about 3 to 4 blocks by about half to 1 block wide in a willow, mule-fat area. It also spent some time in ivy-covered ukes near an apartment complex feeding on berries. It fed a few feet off the ground. It was often seen on the edge of a willow clump and dry mustard plants, then melted back into the willow mule-fat patch, only to reappear some distance away on the edge again. On 5 occasions, it was observed to eat lizards. That's cute. The call was a single sharp weep on an ascending scale. The bird was approachable to within 15 feet and was very photogenic. The following people contributed sighting information to the Orange County Rare Bird Alert. I'm sure we have missed some, and we thank all who have participated. So I was able remotely to know lots of stuff about this bird. Every once in a while I would go up there from Dana Point and look at all the people that I cite here for providing me information. Some of them I probably have misspelled their names, but hey, I'm not going to redo this video. I'm doing this in one swell swoop. Errors and all. Now, why do I include this besides being the person who kind of let everybody know about it? Well, I let people know about it because when I went out on December 22nd, I went out to photograph the Harris's sparrow. And I was one of the first birders in California that was using digital cameras, even if they were Olympus 2020s. 2 megapixels and 2 power. People said at that time, hey, digital cameras will never replace film cameras. Well, that's one thing. Another thing that they figured out wrong. And eventually I upgraded it, believe it or not, to a 30-30. That's the 30-30 on the left that I still have because it kind of almost doubled the amount of resolution and about a 2 power equivalent. And the one on the right is my present Nikon P1000, show you the size of the cameras. But what I did was I hooked up the 2020 to a C90 Celestron spotting scope, a reflector. So I was there that day. on December 22nd, taking a digital picture of this bird. Now, I don't have the original. In fact, I found this online because David Mark asked me for my photograph, and he put it on his website next to his live bird sighting of nuttings. So this very well could have been taken through the Celestron spotting scope and the 2020. And I went home that day and immediately took that digital photograph and put it online. I think that was the first time in California that a photograph taken the day that the bird was seen within a couple of hours was then distributed throughout the internet. An important landmark, considering today you can go directly from a camera out to people on the internet. Pretty bird, Nuttings flycatcher. The next bird I want to tell you about is the Bar-tailed Godwit. This is the wandering Tattler of the Sea and Sage Audubon from February of 2010. And Jim Pike has this column, and he says about the rarities. To date, the highlight of the season has been the Bar-tailed Godwit that's wintering at the upper end of the Newport Bay. The first county record was initially detected by Neil Gilbert on 31 October and has been reliably found below the Jamboree Street Bridge ever since. And it's really neat. So we found out about this on October 31st, and I went out the next day, and so did, lots and lots of birders, Orange County birders, very photogenic species. But the pressure is on me because that's part of my Christmas bird count area. And my team, Ann Stanton, Steve Counts, and myself, were expected to get the bird and document it for the Christmas bird count. Lots of pressure. I didn't know at the time that the count compiler actually came at first light that day and made sure that they had the bird. We got there a little bit after sunrise. So did we see the bird? Whew, yes, we did. And we documented it, and I submitted the picture to the Audubon Field Notes to say, hey, look, we have this bird. Bar-tailed Godwit Center, Orange County, Coastal California, photo Joel Weintraub. They don't put too many photos in the Christmas counts, but they did this one. If you want to see what the original looks like, watch closely. You'll see the original photo. And I use this because there's lots of different species here, and point that out to beginning birders. Bar-tailed Godwit. Now I want to finish this section by indicating another project that I did in Orange County, California. Orange County, California and Doheny State Beach that you're looking at used to be an area where wintering gulls were in great numbers. In fact, classes that taught gull identification would come down here. But over time, there is a sanitary landfill nearby who discouraged these birds from going there. And perhaps the numbers have gone down. We have less and less gulls during the winter bird counts. But I found out that a lot of these birds were banded. And so I spent 170 field days from September 1997 to May 1998. Before I taught classes at Cal State, I would drive up there. I would go to Doheny in the early morning. I had mostly afternoon classes and read bands. I got to be pretty good at it. You would read bands with, the C90 scope at high magnification. You'd walk around. You would never put your scope on your shoulder, the tripod, in a horizontal position, because the birds would think it was a gun. You would hold it vertically. And over 300 California gulls and close to 100 western gulls bands were actually read. And a lot of them were refound. So I had lots and lots of band information. And I show people this, that the banding agency gives you the certificate of appreciation, and eventually they stopped giving me these and just gave me computer printouts, reading gull bands. So I certainly increased the information about where these birds were wintering. I think at that time I had 10% of the entire returns of California gull band sightings. So here is where Dana Point is, and I had bands read from Mono Lake, from Salt Lake, all the way up to Alberta, Canada. So really kind of a neat study. So birding has been, a blessing to some extent. My wife and I have gone on ecotourism vacations. They're not birding trips per se. She's not a birder, but they're cultural, looking at new countries. And we've gone to Alaska twice, cruises. We've gone to Hawaii, etc. But the ones that were really memorable, and I'll do this in alphabetical order, was we went to Africa. Here I am trying to explain to this individual what this bird looks like in my camera, and he's very good. He can find the bird in my bird book and knew more about birds easily than I did. And look, there's a hippopotamus in Africa, and what's on its back? Well, that's a friendly species. I know that one. And so should you now. A white wagtail. We went to the Amazon. What a wonderful place. Looking at a tree filled with nests of Oropendula individuals. And here I am at the front. I can recognize my wristwatch. And it gives me a chance of looking to the left and the right and having a clear field of view. We went to Australia and saw the fauna and flora and part of Australia. We went to Costa Rica, which is filled with bird species and interesting animals like the sloth and hinga, bare-throated tiger heron. I think I got that right. And memorable going to the Galapagos Islands. These are not in the order of time that we visited them. Seeing the birds on the Galapagos Islands and seeing what Darwin saw when the beagle came through this area. So I want to end this with a poem. A poem. It's not often that a poem is written about me. This poem is by Stephen Ingraham. When I met him in 2001, he was teaching English on the East Coast, and his goal was always to make a living evaluating binoculars. And in fact, he actually achieved that. I think now, and I did a Google search on him, he's taking groups down to Central America on birding and photography groups. But he had done a Better View Desired newsletter, and whenever there was an optics field day where optical manufacturers would come with their gear, he often was hired to be there as well. And there was one at Orange County in 2001. There was an optics day at San Joaquin Wildlife Sanctuary, and people there asked me if I was willing to take Stephen around birding, and I said sure. That was great. I had done binocular workshops. I had done binocular labs, and I was known for that. And he wrote a poem. I didn't know he was writing a poem about me, and then later I got a copy of it. See if I can do justice to this. Road birding is better than road rage any day. It was the swoop of it, the soar of it, the glide, the sheer stand on their wings, aerial acrobatics of the turn and twist pursuit that caught our eyes, that pulled us up to the bluff top, right out of the high-speed congestion of collapsing lanes south of Laguna Beach as we drove up the coast, that made us for a second there as we should have been paying attention to cars, merging like cards in a card shark's shuffled deck, just a little dangerous, more than a little distracted. Vicariously riding the abrupt thermals of the eroded hills with the three of them, with can it be a golden eagle and two hawks? Perhaps a red-tail and a red-shouldered, playing out this territorial debate in a display of aerial artistry and raw aggression, the like of which is only equaled by California drivers on their freeways. I was a passenger, a visitor from the east, and all of this, of course, took only seconds, in moving traffic in the car up the coast toward Boca Chica. And just then, as the constriction of the highway broke through into 3 lanes again, the eagle settled on a telephone pole on the bluff, hunched in on himself, while one of the hawks still dived around him, harassing, and the other soared out ahead to land on the second pole beyond. And Joel, my guide for the day, and I were debating its identity as the speedometer climbed back up to cruising speed, and we swept beyond ourselves. And Joel said, "You want to stop and take a look?" And he would have too, pulling maybe a high-speed U-turn, as spectacular as anything we had just seen from the Hawks and Eagle. But my courage failed me, and I said, "In this traffic?" And we soared on up the coast, road birding all the way, probably no more dangerous than anyone else on the highway that day. And we had just been talking about it too, and about how Joel tells his students road birding stories and demonstrates on field trips calling off a peregrine, maybe, or a duck on the edge of the Upper Newport Bay, by shape and size and probability, out of the corner of his eye, in passing, while driving. And how they always ask him, how does he do it, if it isn't dangerous? And he tells them he does it all the time, traveling with his wife, and they ask him what she thinks about it, and he says, "Well, I don't tell her I'm doing it. She's not a birder anyway." And I am thinking about that focus, that trained attention that sees even while we aren't looking, that heightened awareness of the landscape around us and all its nuances, that makes us so sensitive to bird sign that something much more subtle than an embattled eagle every jay that crosses the road, the distinctive flight of a flicker, the barb of a passing goldfinch, every out-of-place bump, hump, and squiggle on the tree or the roofline against the sky rings in our minds like an alarm. Bird alert, bird alert. And we automatically go into seek and identify mode, no matter what else we are doing at the time, despite California traffic, despite conversations, despite the dictates of polite society. And Joel says, I think it makes me a better driver. It keeps me awake. You know, just as long as I keep a little extra room between myself and the car ahead. And of course, we do survive the drive to Boca Chica and back. And we are pretty sure, a golden eagle and 2 hawks. Maybe a red-tailed and a red-shouldered, carving the sky over the bluffs with an alarming precision. Something neither of us is likely to ever forget, which is more than most of the passing drivers that day can say. But then I guess you have to be a road birder to really understand that. Stephen Ingraham, 2001. Yes, I still remember that. In fact, I know exactly where we saw those 3 birds. And I looked up in the map. It's not Laguna Beach, actually. It's Newport Beach, and we were right there on the northern part of Newport Beach. Pretty good. A poem, and I also have a mic named after me. Of course, that's another video on my 1966 trip. So I hope you enjoyed that little retrospective. This has been another JDW Talks. I have YouTube talks on census resources and Ellis Island. And the 1950 census is going to open up in April, and most of the recent YouTubes have been in genealogy. But I do have natural history topics and virtual birding field trips as well. So go out, enjoy yourself. You never know what you're going to see if you're doing birding. And when the next Christmas bird count comes around, I hope that you will volunteer to be on those. Good birding.